Hi, class two, number two. Um, I'm glad that you guys got all your work done this week. I'm glad that you guys worked really hard and finished all your work. If you didn't, please try to get it in anyways because I marked down everything that's turned in. And if I see some work not coming in, I will have to talk to your mom and dad. So please get it in, even if it's late. All right? Not too late. Don't wait too long to do it. Do it as soon as you can. All right. So this is going to be the continuation of Pinocchio. I'm not sure how many chapters I'm going to read today, but I'm going to read probably about 10 to 15 minutes worth of chapters, which is, I'm reading starting on chapter 5. I don't know how far I'll get. Hopefully 5, 6, 7, hopefully up to chapter 8, but we'll see. All right. So, chapter 5. Night was coming on, and Pinocchio, remembering that he had eaten nothing all day, began to feel a gnawing in his stomach that very much resembled appetite. Remember, he hasn't been alive very long. So even though he's probably about this tall, he still doesn't know a lot of things about the world. So for the first time, he's feeling what it is to be hungry. Okay. But appetite with boys travels quickly. And in fact, after a few minutes, his appetite had become hunger. And in no time, his hunger became ravenous, a hunger that was really quite unsupportable. Poor Pinocchio ran quickly to the fireplace where a saucepan was boiling and was going to take off the lid to see what was in it. But the saucepan was only painted on the wall. You can imagine his feelings. His nose, which was already long, became longer by at least 3 fingers. He then began to run around the room, searching in the drawers and in every imaginable place in hopes of finding a bit of bread. If it was only a bit of dry bread, a crust, a bone left by a dog, a little moldy pudding of Indian corn, a fish bone, a cherry stone, in fact, anything that he could gnaw. But he could not find anything, nothing at all, absolutely nothing. In the meantime, his hunger grew and grew, and poor Pinocchio had no other relief than yawning, and his yawns were so tremendous that sometimes his mouth almost reached his ears. And after he had yawned, he spluttered and felt as if he was going to faint. He then began to cry desperately, and he said, "The talking cricket was right. I did wrong to rebel against my papa and to run away from home. If my papa were here, I should not now be dying of yawning." He thinks he's dying of yawning because he's never felt hungry before. So he thinks that yawning is what's killing him. Oh, what a dreadful illness hunger is. Just then he thought he saw something in the dust heap, something round and white that looked like a hen's egg. To give a spring and seize hold of it was the affair of a moment. It was indeed an egg. Pinocchio's joy beats description. It can only be imagined, and almost believing it must be a dream. He kept turning the egg over in his hands, feeling it and kissing it. And as he kissed it, he said, "And now, how shall I cook it? Shall I make an omelet? No, it would be better to cook it in a saucer. Or would it be more savory to fry it in the frying pan? Or shall I simply boil it? No, the quickest way of all is to cook it in a saucer. I am in such a hurry to eat it." Without loss of time, he placed the earthenware saucer on a brazier full of red-hot embers. Into the saucer, instead of oil or butter, he poured a little water, and then the water began to smoke. Tuck! He broke the eggshell over it that the contents might drop in. But instead of the white and the yolk, a little chicken popped out, very gay and polite. Making a beautiful curtsy, it said to him, "A thousand thanks, Master Pinocchio, for saving me the trouble of breaking the shell. Adieu until we meet again. Keep well, and my best compliments to all at home." Thus saying, it spread its wings, darted through the open window, and flying away was lost to sight. The poor puppet stood as if he had been bewitched, with his eyes fixed, his mouth open, and the eggshell in his hand. Recovering, however, from his first stupefaction, he began to cry and scream and to stamp his feet on the floor in desperation. And amidst his sobs, he said, "Oh, indeed, the talking cricket was right. If I had not run away from home, and if my papa were here, I should not now be dying of hunger. Oh, what a dreadful illness hunger is!" And as his stomach cried out more than ever, and he did not know how to quiet it, he thought he would have to leave the house and make an excursion in the neighborhood in hopes of finding some charitable person who would give him a piece of bread. Chapter 5. It was a wild and stormy winter's night. The thunder was tremendous and the lightning so vivid that the sky seemed on fire. A bitter, blusterous wind whistled angrily, raising clouds of dust over the country and causing the trees to creak and groan as it passed. Pinocchio had a great fear of thunder, but hunger was stronger than fear. He therefore closed the house door and made a rush for the village. He reached it in 100 bounds, and with his tongue hanging out and panting for breath, like a dog after game. But he found it all dark and deserted. The shops were closed, the windows were shut, and there was not so much as a dog in the street. It seemed the land of the dead. Pinocchio, urged by desperation and hunger, laid hold of the bell of a house, and he began to ring it with all his might, saying to himself, "That will bring somebody." And so it did. A little old man with a nightcap on his head appeared at the window and called to him angrily, "What do you want at such an hour? Would you be kind enough to give me a little bit of bread?" "Wait there, I will be back directly." And the little old man, thinking, he had to do with one of those rascally boys who had fun at night by ringing house bells just to bother the people who were sleeping quietly. And after a minute, the window was again opened, and the voice of the same little old man shouted to Pinocchio, "Come underneath and hold out your cap." Pinocchio pulled off his cap, but as he held it out, an enormous basin of water was poured down on him, watering him from head to foot as if he had been a pot of dried up geraniums or flowers. He returned home like a wet chicken, quite exhausted with fatigue and hunger, and as he no longer had strength to stand, he sat down and he rested his damp and muddy feet on a brazier full of burning embers. Oops, excuse me. He then fell asleep, and while he slept, his feet, which were wooden, took fire, and little by little they burned away and became cinders. Okay, so he fell asleep by a little fire so he could dry up. But remember, he's made out of wood. So he put his feet by the fire so they would dry, and they ended up catching on fire. And they turn into, have you ever seen wood when it's burned up? It turns black. Those are cinders. Pinocchio continued to sleep and to snore as if his feet belonged to someone else. And at last, about daybreak, he woke because someone was knocking at the door. "Who is there?" he asked, yawning and rubbing his eyes. "It is I," answered a voice, and the voice was Geppetto's voice. And I haven't showed you any pictures because there are no pictures yet. Okay, chapter 7. Poor Pinocchio, whose eyes were still half shut from sleep, had not as yet discovered that his feet were burned off. The moment, therefore, that he heard his father's voice, he slipped off his stool to run and open the door, but after stumbling 2 or 3 times, he fell his whole length on the floor. The noise he made in falling was as if a sack of wooden ladles had been thrown from the 5th story. "Open the door," shouted Geppetto from the street. "Dear papa, I cannot," answered the puppet, crying and rolling about on the ground. "Why can't you?" "Because my feet have been eaten." "And who has eaten your feet?" "The cat," said Pinocchio, seeing the cat, who was amusing herself by making some shavings, dance with her paws. Open the door, I tell you, repeated Geppetto. If you don't, when I get in the house, you shall have the cat from me. I can't stand up. Believe me, oh, poor me, I shall have to walk on my knees for the rest of my life. Geppetto, believing that all this lamentation was only another of the puppet's tricks, he thought of a means of putting an end to it, and climbing up the wall, he got in at the window. He was very angry, and at first he did nothing but scold. But when he saw his Pinocchio lying on the ground and really without feet, he was quite overcome. He took him in his arms and he began to kiss and caress him and to say 1,000 endearing things to him. And as the big tears ran down his cheeks, he said, sobbing, "My little Pinocchio, how did you manage to burn your feet?" "I don't know, Papa, but believe me, it has been an infernal night that I shall remember as long as I live. It thundered and lightened, and I was very hungry. And then the talking cricket said to me, 'It serves you right. You have been wicked and you deserve it.' And I said to him, 'Take care, cricket.' And he said, 'You are a puppet and you have a wooden head.' So I threw the handle of a hammer at him and he died. But the fault was his, for I didn't wish to kill him. And the proof of it is that I put an earthenware saucer on a brazier of burning embers. But a chicken flew out and said, 'Adieu until we meet again,' and many compliments to all at home. And I got still more hungry, for which reason that little old man in a nightcap opening the window said to me, 'Come underneath and hold out your hat.' Then he poured a basin of water on my head. Asking for a little bread isn't a disgrace, is it?" So I returned home at once, and because I was always very hungry, I put my feet on the brazier to dry them. Then you returned, and I found they were burnt off, and I'm always hungry, but I have no longer any feet. Oh, oh, oh. And this is a picture of Geppetto climbing through the window to come and save Pinocchio, and his feet are burned off. But did you notice that what Pinocchio did? All he did was blame everybody for being disobedient. He blamed it on the man who put the water on him. He blamed it on the chicken who flew away and didn't feed him. He blamed it on the cricket for making fun of his wooden head, but he didn't take any responsibility for his disobedience. Okay? Then poor Pinocchio began to cry and to roar so loudly that he was heard 5 miles away. Geppetto, who from all this jumbled account had understood only one thing, which was that the puppet was dying of hunger. He drew from his pocket 3 pears, and giving them to him, he said, "These 3 pears were intended for my breakfast, but I will give them to you willingly. Eat them, and I hope they will do you good. If you wish me to eat them, be kind enough to peel them for me." "Peel them?" said Geppetto, astonished. "I should never have thought, my boy, that you were so dainty and fastidious. That is bad. In this world we should accustom ourselves from childhood to like and to eat everything, for there is no saying to what we may be brought. There are so many chances." "You are no doubt right," interrupted Pinocchio, "but I will never eat fruit that has not been peeled. I cannot bear rind." Rind is the peeling on the fruit. So that good Geppetto fetched a knife, and arming himself with patience, he peeled the 3 pears and he put the rind on a corner of the table. Having eaten the first pear in 2 mouthfuls, Pinocchio was about to throw away the core, but Geppetto caught hold of his arm and he said to him, do not throw it away. In this world everything may be of use, but the core I am determined I will not eat," shouted the puppet, turning upon him like a viper. Ooh, he was being mean to his dad the way he responded, huh? His dad fed him and he was mean to him. "Who knows? There are so many chances," repeated Geppetto without losing his temper. And so the 3 cores, instead of being thrown out the window, were placed on the corner of the table together with the 3 rinds. When he had eaten, or rather devoured the pears, Pinocchio yawned tremendously and then said in a fretful tone, I am so hungry as ever, but, my boy, I have nothing more to give you. Nothing? Really? Nothing? I have only the rind and the cores of the three pears. One must have patience, said Pinocchio. If there is nothing else, I will eat a rind. And he began to chew it. At first he made a wry face, but he quickly disposed of the rinds one after the other, and after the rinds even the cores. When he had eaten up everything, he clapped his hands on his sides in satisfaction and said joyfully, "Ah, now I feel comfortable." "You see now," observed Geppetto, "that I was right when I said to you that it did not do to accustom ourselves to be too particular or too dainty in our tastes. We never know, my dear boy, what may happen to us. There are so many chances." And we did get to chapter 8. We're going to stop after chapter 8. So no sooner had the puppet appeased his hunger than he began to cry and to grumble because he wanted a pair of new feet. But Geppetto, to punish him from his naughtiness, allowed him to cry and to despair for half the day. Then he said to him, "Why should I make you new feet? To enable you perhaps to escape again from my home?" "I promise you," said the puppet, sobbing, "that for the future I will be good." "All boys," replied Geppetto, "when they are bent upon obtaining something, say the same thing." "I promise you that I will go to school and that I will study and earn a good character." "All boys, when they are bent on obtaining something, repeat the same story." "But I'm not like the other boys. I am better than all of them, and I always speak the truth. I promise you, Papa, that I will earn a trade, that I will learn a trade, and that I will be the consolation and the staff of your old age." Geppetto, although he put on a severe face, had his eyes full of tears and his heart big with sorrow at seeing his poor Pinocchio in such a pitiable state. He did not say another word, but taking his tools and two small pieces of well-seasoned wood, he set out to work with great diligence. In less than an hour the feet were finished. Two little feet, swift, well knit, and nervous. They might have been modeled by an artist or a genius. "Shut your eyes and go to sleep." So Pinocchio shut his eyes and pretended to be asleep. Now, while he pretended to sleep, Geppetto, with a little glue which he had melted in an eggshell, fastened his feet in their place. And it was so well done that not even a trace could be seen of where they were joined. No sooner had the puppet discovered that he had feet than he jumped down from the table on which he was lying, and he began to spring and to cut 1,000 capers about the room, and as if he had gone mad with the greatness of his delight. "To reward you for what you have done for me," said Pinocchio to his father, "I will go to school at once." "Good boy! But to go to school I must have some clothes." Geppetto, who was poor, and who had not so much as a farthing in his pocket, then made him a little dress of flowered paper, a pair of shoes from the bark of a tree, and a cap of the crumb of bread. Pinocchio ran immediately to look at himself in a crock of water, and he was so pleased with his appearance that he said, strutting about like a peacock, "I look like a gentleman." "Yes, indeed," answered Geppetto, "for bear in mind that it is not fine clothes that make the gentleman, but clean clothes." But the boy, by and by, added the puppet, "To go to school I am still in want. Indeed, I am without the best thing and the most important." "And what is it?" "I don't have a spelling book." "You're right. What shall we do to get one?" "It is quite easy. We have only to go to the booksellers and to buy it." "And the money?" "I have none." "No more have I," added the good old man very sadly. And Pinocchio, although he was a very merry boy, became sad also, because poverty, when it is real poverty, is understood by everybody, even by boys. Well, Patience, exclaimed Geppetto, all at once rising to his feet, putting on his old fustian coat. All patched and darned, he ran out of the house. He returned shortly, holding in his hand a spelling book for Pinocchio. But the old coat was gone. The poor man was in his shirt sleeves, and out of doors it was snowing. And the coat, Papa? I sold it. Why did you sell it? Because I found it too hot. Pinocchio understood this answer in an instant, and unable to restrain the impulse of his good heart, he sprang out and throwing his arms around Geppetto's neck, he kissed him again and again. And that is the end of chapter 8. What is it that Pinocchio understood? That his papa loved him so much that he was willing to suffer with no coat and go out in the snow so his son could have the best. He wanted his son to have an education and to have a spelling book. And don't our parents do that sometimes? Don't they sacrifice so that we, their children, can have the best? Because we love our children so much. Okay? So next Friday, I will read to you chapters 9 through, we'll see how far we can get. Hopefully 4 chapters. I'll try to read 4 chapters a week. Unless they're too long, then it'll be 3. All right? You guys have a nice weekend and enjoy your weekend. Bye-bye.